Hi everyone. I'm a nurse, and like many of you, I've found myself having lots of extra time on my hands, quarantined at home in between work shifts. Um, and I've watched a lot of news reports, social media, much more than I normally do, and I've heard a lot of stories about people who are losing loved ones to the coronavirus in such a strange world where you cannot be with that person and hold their hand and say your goodbyes and the other things that you want to be able to do in person. So I wanted to speak out a little bit from the nursing perspective. I wanted to tell you a story about a patient. I'm going to change some of the details to protect everyone involved. But I had a patient who was elderly, and this was right when COVID was just beginning. And she was being tested. She ended up developing some respiratory issues, symptoms, and she got a COVID-19 test. And it took more than a week to get back the results. And in that time, she worsened, her condition worsened, and her children, there were 5 of them, were unable to come and see her and say their goodbyes. And one of them, whom I spent a lot of time talking with on the phone, was the coordinator for the family. And he reached out to the other siblings and let them know what was happening. And the course of action that we decided upon was that they would make their phone calls. They would call in and talk with her. I remember spending time with her before we started a therapy that would make her slowly become more and more sleepy over time because her organs were shutting down. And I remember being in the room with she and the doctor as they were discussing this therapy and whether or not she wanted to start it. And she said, "You know, I'm ready to go. This is okay." She looked outside and said, "It's a beautiful day. And yes, I want to start the therapy because it means that my suffering with breathing will be lessened." And so the doctor, wanting just to make double sure, said, "You know, are you sure you wouldn't like to see a couple more sunrises?" And she looked out the window again and she said, "Nope, it's a beautiful day and this is the day. I'm ready to go." And so that morning, I was able to facilitate several calls with her loved ones, whom she was able to speak with and say her goodbyes. That was the one thing that she had asked, that she wanted to be able to say goodbye to all of her children. So a couple of the children didn't get the message or weren't able to call in until she was already on a therapy and was no longer rousable or able to wake up very easily. And I remember talking to one of the children who was crying and was very upset and said, "I just wish that I could have said goodbye to her." And I said, "Well, you still can. I will go into the room. I'll, pick up the phone and I'll hold it to her ear. And you should say whatever you have to say because," and I tell this to patients a lot, many of whom are in the room with their loved one who is passing, but even for those who can't be there but could have a phone call or a FaceTime. There's not scientific studies because we don't have people frequently that come back from the dead and can tell us what it's like. But there are many, many anecdotal stories of people who have gone somewhere when they're close to death and in a kind of limbo, as it's described by many different people, yet return and live for longer. My own grandmother had this experience. She said she was never afraid of death because she almost died once and she saw a long tunnel with light at the end of it and felt an incredible warmth and peace. And she came back, didn't go down to the light, but she was very grateful for that experience and said it helped her never to fear death after that. So what I do tell people, what we hear in a lot of these stories of people who maybe were suspended in the air above their body when it was on an operating table, things like that, what they say is that they could see and hear everything that was happening in the room. And I always want to tell family members, say whatever you want to say, because we do know that the hearing is the last sense that goes when someone is dying. And I really believe that those things that are said to the loved one, even if they may be asleep or kind of in a coma, can still be heard and appreciated by them. And so with this woman who was dying, I held up the phone to her ear. And although she wasn't able to respond, I could hear a very clear, significant difference in the way she was breathing. I had been in the room off and on a lot with her that morning, and this was a new change in the way she was breathing. And it was just a sign to me that once she heard that familiar voice on the other end of the phone, it made a big difference to her. She heard it, she took it in, and I believe that it really helped her in her passing. And that was done with 2 different children, and I saw a change both times. So as a nurse, I just want to tell you 2 things, those of you who may be facing an unimaginable difficulty in not being able to be at the bedside of your loved one. Number 1, if you have an opportunity to say what you want to say, even if it's via a phone or FaceTime or a message passed to a nurse that will then pass it on to your loved one in person, say it and believe that it will make a difference and it will be heard. And I would add, if none of that is possible, then say it in prayer. And I personally fully believe that it will still be heard that way too. The second thing is just a word of comfort to those of you who can't be there and for whom this is a great anguish and distress. I'm a nurse. It doesn't matter what kind of nurse I am. I could be a childbirth educator. I could be an ER nurse. I could be an ICU nurse or a supervisor. It doesn't matter what kind of nurse I am. We all came to this job for the same reasons. We love to help people, to assist and care and nurture people when they need it the most. And I can assure you that whoever is taking care of your loved one, even in the most stressed environment where it's impossible to sit with a person, hour after hour because there are so many patients, your loved one will receive love, care, and tenderness even at those last hours. I can guarantee you that someone who's there will be there in your stead. That's who we are, and that's what we do. And the teams that we work with are the same, the respiratory therapists, the nurse assistants, even the housekeepers, the facilities management team. Everyone is there because we want to care for your loved ones, and we will no matter what. So I hope that you can take these words in if you need them, and they can be of some comfort to you. Be well and stay home if you can. Bye-bye.